for a very long time now. And once again, glad to have you with us, Nelson.
My
So,
pleasure.
so let's start off with some questions that we wanted to ask you, Nelson. Could you share with our viewers as to what made you start SPIF and the mission behind the organization?
Right. So, Suicide Prevention India Foundation was started in 2017 September. I did this because I lost my best friend to suicide. And that happened a long time back, but the impact of that kept coming back to me. And at some point in time, I decided that all the thinking that I was doing about suicide prevention should perhaps be translated into actual work. The organization itself is focused on a community-based intervention, which involves lay people like you and me to be able to recognize signs of suicide, to be able to respond with care and concern, then to persuade the person who's emotionally distressed to get help, and then finally referring them to a mental health professional. This is called the gatekeeper training, and it's a World Health Organization recommended suicide prevention strategy. And it's especially apt in countries like resource poor countries like India and China, where the mental health infrastructure, whether it's in terms of hospitals, suicide crisis helplines, or even mental health professionals, is woefully inadequate.
Thanks for sharing that personal story, Nelson. Also, when you were talking about SPIF, I can understand that in the short span of a few years, you've done a lot of work in this space, especially with regards to training programs. Could you share with the viewers what was the greatest challenges that you faced in your journey to raise awareness about suicide, specifically in our country? Can you mention any specific incident that made you realize the quantum of the problem that India is facing with regards to this issue of suicide?
Okay, so the challenges have been very many because for a lot of people, they don't want to even use the word suicide. And suicide is the first word in our organization's name. So I'll give you two instances where I realized how deeply stigmatized or how difficult, or the quantum of the problem as well as the deep stigma that is there. Firstly, we did a partnership with IIT Bombay, and we were supposed to do suicide prevention training across many colleges. And we signed an MOU with them, and then they came back and told us that there's a pushback from colleges because they don't want suicide prevention training. And I can understand why, because we faced the same kind of pushback. Colleges don't want to acknowledge that they have an issue with non-suicidal self-injury and suicide. Secondly, so we went, then we signed a fresh MOU, and we did a workshop called SAD No More, or Stress, Anxiety and Depression No More. And of course, we sandwiched suicide prevention into that somehow and spoke about it. Secondly, I want to say recently we were talking to a very big college in Bangalore, and the conversation immediately shifted to self-harm and suicide. And this was the head of the counseling department who told us that almost half of the students, have self-harmed or made an attempt to die. So the quantum of the problem is essentially can be defined by that especially young people, because of various stressors, which have not been seen so far, maybe ever, are suddenly dealing with issues that they are unable to cope with, and therefore are using self-harm or making an attempt to die. So there you have it.
Got it. Thank you for sharing those insights. It was especially revealing, especially the fact that nearly half of the students in a particular college, they went through periods where they harmed themselves or attempted suicide. Really kind of, like you said, shows how big of a problem it is in our current society. When I'm talking about suicide with a lot of my peers and this is a question that even I have asked myself, right? Are there any symptoms that we can identify if somebody in our circles is going through, let's say, is considering suicide, and like how do you approach it? Because it's not a topic that everybody is very openly talking about. So I just want to understand from you, like, in your experience, do you think that there are any particular symptoms that people who might be having suicidal thoughts express? And if somebody reaches out to us, how best do we handle it? Like, how best can we help them?
So yes, 8 out of 10 people who make an attempt to die by suicide will give out verbal or non-verbal signs. And our gatekeeper training that we do both online and offline, it gives you the knowledge and the skills to recognize these signs and make an intervention, and then to refer them to a mental health professional. So what are these signs? There are the warning signs can be in terms of the person being moody, irritable, depressed, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, and perhaps abusing substances, perhaps getting closer to God, or suddenly stop believing in God. So any erratic behavior that you see, or giving up the prized possessions, or saying things like, I'm a burden to everyone, or saying things like, hey, I wish I could sleep and not wake up anymore. Or they're sharing dark memes, dark art on Insta, or they're posting things which on social media where they seem glum, gloomy. You have to watch out for signs which are associated with feeling hopeless, helpless, and worthless. These three things combine, and also there can be external factors. Maybe there's them suddenly losing weight or gaining weight, or a bright student suddenly starts to score less marks, or they start to become socially isolated. A combination of these factors would be what you would start to recognize as signs that perhaps not everything is hunky-dory. And during those times, it's important to be upfront and saying, is everything okay with you? You seemed fine, but things have not been the same. So how do you, and approaching it that way, and then saying, I'm here if you want to talk, and I'm here if you want to listen. If somebody directly calls you or tells you that they are thinking of killing themselves, it is going to be quite frightening. And especially if you haven't been trained to respond to somebody who's suicidal, and even for trained professionals, this might come as a complete shock. Crisis intervention is quite specialized, and unless you've been trained to do crisis intervention, it can be quite difficult. During those times, what I would suggest is first tell yourself that if you're getting triggered where you start to panic yourself, I would think it's best that you along with that person go to a mental health professional. And what do I mean by that? If the person is acutely distressed themselves, and you are acutely distressed by what they've just said, you might want to go to a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. And if it's acute distress, then you might want to visit a hospital where they have psychiatric care. Otherwise, what I would suggest is to calm down and to tell yourself that, hey, my friend wants to talk and I can listen. So you can say, okay, you're feeling suicidal. So what is how you're feeling, and what's going on? Would you like to talk about it? And you can provide what is called active listening, where you listen actively without. There's going to be a urge for you to jump in and to perhaps either discount, belittle, or offering solutions. Most of the time, those who are feeling suicidal are not looking for you to offer any solutions. What they're really looking for is to express how they are feeling. And you willing to give them a listening ear is going to make all the difference. And you have to be non-judgmental, and you have to accept their story, because a lot of times it's possible that what they're telling you is something that you find easy to grapple with. Perhaps they're going through a breakup and you've gone through a breakup and you dealt with it easily. So if you were to say, hey, come on, get over it, then they would feel not heard and they will feel shut out, and they may not express themselves. So listen actively, listen without judgment, don't offer solutions. and make sure that you're, responding back by letting them know that you're actually listening as well as understanding what they're telling you. So if they were to tell you something, you can just paraphrase and say, if I were to understand you correctly, this is what is happening with you. And I can imagine how difficult this must be for you. So offering a bit of empathy as well. So, and later on, once they feel better, you can offer that, to tell them that, hey, listen, I know that what you're going through is pretty painful. Would you consider meeting a mental health professional? Because a lot of times, almost 60% of the cases when somebody is feeling suicidal and incompleted suicides, there is an underlying mental health issue. And the person who's going through what they're going through might perhaps inaccurately, subscribe their, think that they're feeling suicidal right now could be because of a particular reason. In fact, it could be for maybe multiple reasons, and maybe the main reason is an undiagnosed mental health issue, right? So and your second thing is to listen, and then to persuade them to go get help, and then finally either physically taking them to a mental health professional, or you would fix an appointment for them to go to a mental health professional, or you would get them to promise that they would go to a mental health professional, and then of course after that happens, that you would follow up to see how they do.
Got it. I think that was a very insightful answer, Nelson, because it's a common question that a lot of us grapple with since we're not sure how to proceed in situations like this. And I think your answer was definitely helpful. So one of the things I noticed in your answer was that you mentioned about reaching out to mental health professionals, right? And I just realized that since it's such a stigmatized topic in India, we know where our neighborhood doctors are, but we're not really sure who's the nearest mental health professional, right? And that's I think one of the things that I noticed about SPIF's initiatives, and I found it really useful, was the mental health professionals directory that you have on your website. I feel it's a very valuable resource for a lot of people who really think they're going through a tough time but don't know who to reach out to. Right. So could you just how you went about setting it up, and how we can how a person can access it, and also let's say I went to a particular mental health professional and I found him or her very useful. I found the experience very useful. Would I be able to recommend a mental health professional to the directory?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we went about putting this was clearly because the pool of mental health professionals in India is so large, and sometimes people call themselves mental health professionals even if they've done like a weekend course or a course which is about a week's time. So what we've done is we've currently mapped it out to 8 cities where they're only consisting of clinical psychologists and psychiatrists. We have data for 20 cities that should be hopefully up in the next week to 10 days. If you come across a therapist who's not on that list and you find the person useful, please just drop us an email at info@spif.in and we could add to that directory. Also, what I would suggest and recommend is that that if I keep saying that finding a therapist is just like maybe finding the right pair of jeans. Sometimes you've got to try on a few before you find the one that fits. Except that in case you're pouring your heart out for an hour and it's it's quite exhausting. So that's why I recommended going through a recommended or being referred by a friend or somebody is the best way to find a therapist, because there's some amount of vetting that has been done, and that this person can be trusted. The problem is sometimes therapists, instead of doing good, are actually doing harm. And a lot of cases, if you don't know how to spot that this person is a bad therapist and is actually harming you, you might just completely miss it. So go with your gut instinct. If you're going to meet a therapist, test them. Tell them a few things that you want to talk about yourself, which you find it difficult to talk about with your friends. Because a therapist is supposed to be, patient, understanding, supportive, and most importantly, non-judgmental and not being, discriminatory. If you find that this person is not all kosher, go with your gut instinct. I mean, You just need to know that the connect is the most important thing. It's called building a therapeutic alliance. And if you're unable to do that, just try another therapist. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nelson, for that answer. Also, another answer that I think is more like a subjective one, but it's something that I really want to ask you, since you're somebody who's been working in the space for a very long time and been championing the cause. What would you like tell to a student or a youngster who's going through, let's say, having thoughts of suicide? Like, what would you like them to know?
Yeah. So if somebody is, having thoughts of suicide, the first thing I want to say is that that it is okay to have these thoughts. A lot of us have thoughts of suicide, and this is something that is part of what's happening in your life. So when do you need to start worrying about it? I would say that if you're having these thoughts, think about why you're having these thoughts and perhaps start talking to somebody about it. Don't wait till you have a crisis, because if you wait for too long, then you are going to be kind of like digging yourself into a ditch, and the longer you wait, the deeper the ditch is, and the more difficult it is for you to get out of that ditch, right? But at any point in time, even if you're acutely suicidal, suicide is preventable and can get help for how you're feeling. And most of the time, suicide crisis is short-lived, because the psychic distress that you're feeling is tremendous. It'll just really wear you out. So if you're feeling suicidal, the first thing I would recommend is to meet with a mental health professional. Go and have a chat, because you might be falsely thinking that the reason why you're feeling suicidal is because of a certain reason. And I keep going back to saying that it could be perhaps that it's undiagnosed depression or a mood disorder or a personality disorder or anything else, right? So a mental health professional can gauge as to what is happening, and maybe help you talk through how you're feeling, as well as maybe recommend you for a psych evaluation to find out what exactly is going on. Yeah. So it's okay not to be okay, and most of us will have thoughts of suicide at some point in their lives, and it may come, it may go, it persists. That's when you need to worry, and like I said, talk to somebody that you can trust, a friend, a family member, and ideally a mental health professional.
Got it. Also, I think I just received a question from an audience member that she wanted to post to you. So they want to know how they can volunteer with SPIF, where are the places that you're located in, and if they're interested in working with SPIF, how does this go about? Like, how can they reach out to you, etc.?
I think you can start by becoming a gatekeeper. Now, who is a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper is anyone who is in a position who's interacting with another human, and almost all of us at some point in our lives will encounter somebody who's feeling suicidal, and we always feel ill-equipped to handle that situation. So I would say become a gatekeeper. You can become a gatekeeper by going online to www.spif.in. You can click on individual suicide prevention training, and it'll take you to our training page. So you can do our training online. How else can you be associated? If you're a student or a young professional working in an organization, you could maybe pitch gatekeeper training to that organization or to your college, or you could invite us over to do a talk, and we could come over and do a talk. Or you could organize something in your college itself, or something like World Mental Health Day or World Suicide Prevention Day, maybe a poster campaign or a talk or a panel or a walkathon, and we can provide you with the resources for these talks. In fact, we're currently doing a campaign called Your Life Matters, where we're creating a website called yourlifematters.in, and over there, colleges can sign up, become partners with us, and we can give them collateral related to either posters or designs for placards if they want to do a walkathon. And want to organize a mental health festival, then we can put together a schedule for them. So all of this comes at no cost, except if we want to hire a professional trainer for a workshop, and in that case, there will be a cost attached. We are also open to internships. The areas that we're looking at is research, writing, social media, helping our in operations, streamlining our processes currently, and maybe even organizing events. Yeah, so all of that, yeah, we are open to internships, but our internships are virtual. So meaning it's a work from home situation or work from wherever you are kind of situation. So because we don't have the bandwidth, the physical infrastructure to house too many interns. Yeah, we are open to internships as well.
All right. Also, we have one last audience question that I thought we could take if you have the time, Nelson. So I think one of our viewers has asked, what is the culture that institutes can build to help individuals seek out help if they are considering suicide? So how can institutes create a culture that helps individuals who might be considering suicide?
So the way to build the culture is, first of all, ideally to have a suicide prevention policy in place and make that public, and have skin in the game where they actually have somebody who is heading the suicide prevention task force. But if it has to be student-led, how do you build a culture? You can build a culture by starting to normalize conversations around mental health. So organize events, talks, put out posters that people can read, or have a safe space community in the organization. So you can have a safe space, for mental health, where you have these conversations, where maybe once a month they meet, and there are rules about saying that whatever is spoken is going to be private, it's going to be confidential, and they're not going to be judgmental, offer solutions unless the person themselves seeks that out. And also, I think what is helpful is having role models who have sought help and have used it to deal with their own mental health issues. So if, for instance, there is somebody in the college who's had a mental health issue and they went and got help and are feeling better, they can tell their story, right? So you have all of these success stories about how people have scored more marks or they've won something and so on. So we need role models in the college. So maybe every week or every month you have somebody whose mental health story comes out in the college bulletin and everybody reads about it. Maybe somebody says, I suffered severe panic attacks because I was bullied, or somebody says, I've always been socially anxious, but I got over my social anxiety by doing this. Right? So address various issues related to bullying, discrimination, body image, sexuality, gender. Because one of the biggest problems that somebody who has a mental health issue or is suffering psychological distress is that they will isolate themselves because there are no avenues to have these conversations. But the moment you start where someone opens up, you feel, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not the only person going through this, facing this issue. There are others. And then you feel better about it. And once you start talking about it, you start to normalize this conversation, right? So.
Sure. Thanks a lot for taking the time out. I think it was a very insightful session that all our viewers would have really loved. And once again, we wish you the best of luck with the amazing work you're doing at SPIF. I'm pretty sure that after the call, we'll also send out a mail to everyone who's attended the call, mentioning how they can volunteer with SPIF as well. There were a lot of people who were really, really interested in knowing more about how they can help at SPIF and how they can reach out. So once again, thanks a lot, Nelson, for taking time out of your busy schedule and attending this webinar.
My pleasure, Siddharth. Thanks for having me over. Thank you, Global Shapers. I want to say, if anyone has any questions, they want to reach out to me directly, they can reach out to me at nelson@spif.in. Yeah?
Sure. I'll also send out the mail, this mail ID if it's fine, on the mail that it's going
to. Please do. Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. So that was our first speaker for the webinar, Mr. Nelson from SPIF. So it is right now about to be 6 p.m. in a while. We'll slowly have Dr. Kiran joining us. So just a brief introduction of Dr. Kiran for our viewers. Dr. Kiran is experienced psychiatrist who's won a lot of laurels both during his college days and post his graduation when he's working as a professional. He's currently working as an associate professor at Vaidehi Medical College and serves as the honorary secretary of IAPP-KB. And he's edited a lot of books on the subject of psychiatry as well. So I believe we have him on the call at the moment. Let me just try. Hello, Dr. Kiran. Are you able to hear us? Hello, Dr. Kiran. Are you able to hear us?
Hi, Siddharth.
Hello, Dr. Kiran.
Audible?
Yeah, audible. Once again, thanks a lot, Dr. Kiran, for taking the time out and for coming for this webinar. I'm sure that a lot of our viewers would have some really interesting questions to ask you with regards to the medical profession and suicide as well. So if it's fine, can we start off with some questions that we had to structure the discussion to begin with?
Definitely, Siddharth. We can start.
Sure. So one of the things that we wanted to discuss about was so nowadays there are a lot of shows and movies that come out that deal with the subject of suicide, especially in shows like, for instance, 13 Reasons Why, which focus a lot on suicide, right? So I wanted to know about how serious of an issue is suicide in India, especially among the youth, and could you also touch upon a bit about the influence on media on this subject?
Yeah, definitely. The suicide is a global issue. And probably, as we are aware, that 10th of September is celebrated as the World Suicide Prevention Day. Okay. Now, suicide in India is definitely a reality. And coming to Bangalore, Bangalore had the dubious distinction of being the suicide capital of India till about a few years back. Now, I think it's Puducherry which is at the top, and suicide in Bangalore is still there. Now, when you talk about youth, when I say youth, probably we'll discuss something between 10 to 29 years of age. You would be surprised to know that suicide is the second leading cause of death in this age group.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. So if you ask me a question, which is the first cause of death among this age group is accidents. So it's so distressing to me as a professional, because when you look at suicide and accidents, these are two subjects which are preventable.
Exactly.
Okay, so unfortunately, we are losing the youth of India today for two important causes which are preventable, particularly suicide, which is the most preventable cause. Okay. So the important thing, the take-home message is suicide is very common in youths. In fact, it is the second leading cause of death in youths. The second thing that is important in youths is, now, when we talk about suicide, we are talking about completed suicide. So these are statistics for completed suicides. Okay. But you would also be astonished to know that for every one single completed suicides, there are about 20 to 25 of them who attempt suicide. Okay. So this attempt category in youths is particularly very, very high. So in fact, since I am working in a super specialty hospital, which is a 1,800 bedded hospital, we get about 2 to 3 cases of attempted suicide every day, and almost 70 to 75% of them are in the age group of 10 to 29.
Oh, almost 3 in 4 almost.
Yeah, 3/4 of them kind of thing. So that's a very, very important thing. For the second part of the discussion about media, see, media, you know that today probably the whole context of media is different. We have WhatsApp, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, a lot of these things, including the classical media in the form of TV and newspaper and other things. Unfortunately, the media covering of suicides is little bit irresponsible. If I can put it across like that. In fact, Indian Psychiatric Society in 2014 came out with guidelines on how media should report suicide. For example, sensationalizing suicides, particularly if you talk about suicides in celebrities, it has been sensationalized and it's 24/7, the same clips goes on and on kind of a thing. Now, this leads to a lot of things called mimicking suicide or copycat suicide. The children and adolescent, particularly youth, they get carried away that if a celebrity can do this and the world is talking so much about it, so why can't I also take it as a measure kind of a thing? Okay, and particularly depiction of suicide and probably self-harm in media, like probably you had an film titled "Mental Hai Kya" with somebody with a blade and other things. Now that again sends out wrong message for the youth, telling that self-harm is acceptable kind of a thing. Okay, so I think there should be better representation of this sensitive topic in the media, which is also there in some aspects. But overall, as a professional, I would like to say that the handling of the subject in the media is not appropriate as of today, and we require little bit of sensitization of all the stakeholders.
True that. True that. True that. That's very insightful, especially the numbers regarding how many people in the youth age group are attempting suicide. A lot of people don't realize this because like we tend to think that suicide isn't something that's very common in India, right? Like that's the
Yes.
perception that people have because we don't talk about it. I think the numbers would really help put paint a picture of how important the issue is. So, Doc, one question that we wanted to particularly ask you, right? So this is something that even a lot of people who work in the mental health field, like I've been volunteering in this field of mental health for a while, and I've often faced this question is a lot of people when they say that they're afraid of going to a mental health professional, they say, I'm not sure what's going to happen to me. Like, what will they do? Like, will they send me to a hospital? Like, what happens? So could you just like tell people in the tell to our viewers like what usually happens when you approach a mental health professional with, let's say, stating that you are having suicidal ideation. So what is the process that's happened? Like what is the stuff that the doctor or the counselor, as the case may be, you can trust them? Like could you just like walk through that to our viewers, because a lot of people have never been to a mental health professional and they have this very irrational fear about what happens when they go as well.
Definitely, that's an important question because psychiatrists particularly are stereotyped. Particularly
Mm-hmm.
if somebody thinks about a psychiatrist, it's probably something that is sitting in an asylum with a lot of people around who are behaving in a very abnormal way. Now, that's
Mm-hmm.
not at all true in today's world because today what we practice is much more of a general hospital psychiatry, where
Mm-hmm.
psychiatry or mental health is like any other specialty kind of a thing. And luckily, the number of psychiatrists or mental health professionals of late are slowly increasing. And if you go to
Mm-hmm.
any decent super specialty hospital, you will find one psychiatrist there. So
Mm-hmm.
approaching a mental health professional or availability, at least in metros, is not a challenge that it was at least a decade back. Today,
Mm-hmm.
finding a psychiatrist, a mental health professional in a metro is definitely much more easier. And the
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist is approachable. It's like any other doctor. Like you fix up an appointment, you go and meet the doctor. Yes, there is a lot of prejudice attached to meeting a psychiatrist. There are a lot of stigma attached to meeting a psychiatrist. But
Mm-hmm.
once a psychiatrist comes, the same medical approach is followed. Like a lot of people ask me a question, you look at my face and make a diagnosis, doctor. Now, the psychiatrist cannot do that. I am a mental health professional. I am a basic medical doctor who has a certain principles. We talk to the patient. We try to
Mm-hmm.
understand what are the causes for suicidal ideations. We try to first rule out whether it is because of a mental illness. And at this juncture, please note that not all suicides are because of a mental illness. In fact, if
Mm-hmm.
you look at the statistics, just about 10 to 20% of completed suicides are because of a mental illness. The rest
Mm-hmm.
are because of lot of psychological distress for various reasons, and the reasons can be from very very trivial to something much more serious like a chronic illness, be it a cancer, be it some painful conditions, be it HIV, be it financial losses, anything. So it's much
Mm-hmm.
more of psychological distress, psychosocial factors that leads to suicide rather than mental illness per se. So the first
Mm-hmm.
thing that a psychiatrist will probably do is to run through the history to make the patient comfortable to understand what is the problem. Try to rule out if there is a psychiatric illness, and like how Nelson was telling, whether it is because of a mood disorder, it is because of psychosis, it is because of personality, it is because of substance use, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then is when we try to rule out the other psychosocial causes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what the psychiatrist will do is probably take the question head on and address suicide, which nobody else will do usually. The rest of the people will try to avoid the questions on suicide, and they have a perception that if you talk about something like suicide, you are probably putting a new dimension into the brain of the person, which is very, very untrue. Once you start asking a question, a just simple question that did you feel suicidal or did you have any suicidal ideation in the past a week or a month or something like that, the patient comes out with a gamut of answers. And we are really astonished to find that a lot of times they say that yes, I have planned and I already have material that I have kept in the house, kind of a thing. Okay, so the psychiatrist will be non-judgmental, he will be neutral, he will try to take a complete history, try to rule out common causes, and then take on what should be the line of action, whether it is medication, it is psychotherapy, it is purely counseling, whatever it is. So it's a systematic approach basically.
Got it, got it, got it. Also, just to add on to one more thing on that, right? Like, so you mentioned that they try to understand their history, etc., and stuff like that. So I think one concern that a lot of, at least some of my peers at college, at least had when, like to approach the college counselor was basically that how can I be sure that they won't tell anything that I tell them to somebody else, some other authority figure, like let's say the college professor or their parents, as the case may be. So could you just mention a bit about this aspect? Like, what is the confidentiality that exists between a mental health professional and the patient seeking help?
That's the basic purview under which a mental professional will work. It is definitely very, very confidential. Okay, that's where we start off with. Whatever is the information given, it will be confidential. It will not be shared with anyone unless, there might be some special circumstances where the patient has completely made an agreement that he is going to die and he's telling it to you over the phone. Imagine that he's talking to you over the phone and he's telling you that I want to die and I already have some material. Then probably as a mental health professional, you can dilute the confidentiality and try to inform somebody in the larger interest. But otherwise, in 99% of the time, it is absolutely confidential. Without letting the patient know or getting consent from the patient, we are not going to disclose the information to any third party. Be it the parents also, or it can be the college authority, or it can be anybody. But confidentiality is definitely rest assured in 99% of the cases. In some person where we see that confidentiality has to be diluted because it might harm to the patient, then we definitely dilute it to appropriate authorities.
All right, doctor. Also, one more question, doctor. So, a lot of us have this question. So, at least when we see it in, like, let's say, movies or stuff, right? Like, generally, people who might be facing suicidal symptoms, they're associated with certain symptoms, like, let's say, not talking with anybody and stuff like that. So, but from a professional perspective, right? What are the kind of symptoms that you commonly have seen in cases of suicide, or research has shown that like these are probably symptoms that people who might commit suicide would exhibit?
Yeah. See, one thing what research says is 70 to 75% of patients who have attempted suicide will show some kind of symptoms, but they're very subtle. And there's a wide variation. Okay. Now, sudden changes in behavior, disturbance in sleep pattern, being irrational occasionally, or sometimes being a little bit philosophical or making some plans, like they try to give away their properties or they try to make some kind of an arrangements, and they try to be more philosophical or they try to let go things. Probably these might be some red flags. Okay, and somebody might get themselves into some high risk behaviors like speeding, excessive alcohol intake, excessive substance intake, etc. Now, please note, nothing is pathognomic or nothing is very specific for a person who attempts suicide. There can be a person who's absolutely normal, who's smiling, and even a mental health professional sometimes finds it difficult to pick up whether this person is going to be suicidal. Okay, but the baseline is if anybody talks anything about suicide, even if they make a passing statement that life is not worth living, why are we on this earth, feeling hopeless or feeling pessimistic, then definitely the concept of suicide has to be explored further.
Got it. So essentially, you're saying that if somebody confides in you, stating that they do not find life, I mean, they do not. They seem to show even some vague symptoms. Don't just brush it off. Talk about them talk about the issue with them. Got it.
Definitely.
Got it. Also, so you have been in this practice for quite a while, sir. So just want to understand, doctor. So over the past few years that you have been in this practice and studying, Do you think the concept, do you think the perceptions of Indians towards mental health and towards psychiatry has changed? Like, do you think there's been a more openness, or what do you think has been happening over the past few years?
Yeah. See, I've been in psychiatry for the past 13 years now, and I've seen some changes in psychiatry in the past decade. At least in a metro, definitely the stigma associated with psychiatry is slowly going off because probably the knowledge component is improving. They're becoming aware. And when we talk about mental health, we are talking about positive mental health also of late, and it's just not about illness. We know that the world is becoming very stressful. There's a lot of globalization, there's a lot of urbanization, there's a lot of nuclear family setup that is coming up. Now all these things have added on to stress. So people have suddenly realized that a positive mental health, mental well-being is very, very important, as is the physical health. So awareness is in a metro is totally changing, and I myself as psychiatrist sometimes keeps wondering that people with just 2-3 days of a problem, with little bit of anxiety, with little bit of some adjustment issues, they directly enter to the room of a psychiatrist. I asked them, why did you come? Who referred you? They said we just came directly by looking at the internet or getting some reference kind of thing. Now that's very, very encouraging to me as a psychiatrist, because probably you could not have imagined this few decades back.
True that, true
But
that.
this is probably a skewed view because we are sitting in a metro and we are talking about it. But definitely, when you talk about suburban areas, some tier 2 cities, another thing, definitely the mental health penetration there is abysmally low. Mental health professionals per se are abysmally low at these centers. Stigma is extremely high, okay, and ignorance is extremely high at these places. So as of today in India, in medicine in general and psychiatry particularly, there's a very skewed distribution. Okay, metros are really taking up, and it's almost catching up with the western kind of a culture, but the rural areas and suburban areas are still lagging out.
All right, all right. That's a very interesting perspective about the differences that exist within India itself.
Yeah.
Also, you touched about the fact that the number of mental health professionals are pretty low in India, right? So, just want to ask somebody who studied it, and as well as a practitioner, what do you think are the common challenges that cause people not to take up this field? Like, do you think there are challenges that prevent bright and passionate young students from taking up this field of psychiatry and mental health? And if so, what would you like to tell people who are interested in this field and who are just like in their 10th or 12th grade, for instance?
Yeah. See, the whole thing is there are hardly 8 to 9,000 psychiatrists in India today. If you look at the numbers and statistics, it's almost comparable to some African countries kind of a thing. Okay. So the psychiatrist and the patient ratio in India is absolutely pathetic. Now, it is not because that people did not want to take up psychiatry as such. But the problem was with the infrastructure. Since there were few psychiatrists, and any medical college should have a prerequisite number of professionals to have a psychiatry department and a psychiatry post graduation. Now it all started there. Since the number were few, there were no output at all, kind of a thing. But that's slowly changing, because you would actually be, if I tell you the numbers, some people with very good ranks in all India, some getting 150 ranks, 200 ranks, etc., where they can get any premier seat, they're choosing psychiatry as their first option for various reasons, kind of thing. And now probably there are around 500 medical colleges in India, and each medical college has a department of psychiatry. Now that's very encouraging, and the number of psychiatry students coming out is almost in thousands now. That is again a very good number. So there was a skewed distribution. Now people are taking psychiatry as the first preference, and as young students, particularly in 10th and 12th, psychiatry is not anymore in its dark specialty. It is coming out to be a real scientific specialty, and probably a decade later, when we have good biomarkers to understand the brain, it will definitely be at the top of the specialty list. So they need not feel stigmatized, they need not feel fearful of taking up the specialty. It has wonderful opportunities in the future.
All right, all right, all right. Also, I think we've gotten quite a few audience questions, Dr. Kiran. So just like take. I think one person has asked, is the availability of materials like sleeping pills leading to the increasing number of suicides? And if so, should we curtail accessibility to these materials?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very, very important question, because what is the method of suicide is an important topic of discussion. In a country like India, it is much more of pesticides and then followed by some over-the-counter drugs like sleeping pills. Now, one of the things that WHO has taught us, the way to curtail suicide is to restrict access to these kind of substances, particularly pesticides in rural community and in farmers when we talk about suicides, and over the counter drug. So there are some measures where now most of these drugs are should not be sold over the counter unless it has been prescribed by an professional kind of a thing. But in India the rules are always taken lightly, and the enforcement doesn't go on well. But actually it has become much more stronger now. So to get an over the counter pill, it might be difficult. Reducing access to these kind of substances and materials is definitely a part of suicide prevention strategy. If you look at the statistics from West, the most commonest cause of suicide in the West is firearms. Okay, but in India we don't have firearm injuries as a common cause at all because it's not available. So obviously, if you don't have an accessibility, the way of doing it is going to be reduced. But the other side of the argument is if somebody is suicidal and they are prone to it, or they have a vulnerability, if not one, they are going to use something else also.
Okay,
So
okay.
reducing accessibility is definitely very, very important, but it's not going to solve the whole problem.
Got it, got it. I think we got one more question where Garima has answered, asked, how do I practice emotional first aid when I'm not able to reach out to anyone during a panic attack? Like, for instance, I'm not able to reach anyone. Like, what do you suggest for myself? How can I protect my emotional health when I'm going through a panic attack?
Yeah, see, panic attack is definitely a transient condition. It might last for about a few minutes to few hours maximum, and it is going to settle down on its own. Yes, it is definitely difficult to reach out to a professional every time you have a panic attack. There are some measures where there are some medications which probably a mental health professional will prescribe to take it in these kind of situation. That is a very easy fix. Other than that, other things are like having a psychosocial support where the family knows what you're undergoing. Most of the time, it is fear that something is going to happen to me and nobody is around. Okay, take deep breaths, take sips of water, count back from 20 to 1 in a in a slow manner kind of a thing. Take deep breaths. These are some methods which can reduce the panic attack. But if it is increasing, then it is always better to meet a mental health professional to understand what is happening, whether it is panic attack or a panic disorder or there is something underlying.
All right. Also, we have got one more question, Dr. Kiran. A person has asked, apart from talking to a suicidal person, encouraging them to seek professional help, what else can you do to prevent this or support their healing journey?
Yeah, that's an important question. Now, problem is suicide is a multifactorial problem. So, multiple stakeholders needs to be involved, kind of a thing. Like, for example, WHO has come with this objective called Live Life approach. Okay, it is a LIV, live, and life, LIFE, life approach. What does that mean is we should have L for good leadership. That is in policy and multi-sectorial collaboration is very important. There should be a good eye, that is intervention for implementation. There should be a proper vision for innovation, financing, and delivery platforms. There should be good evaluation of all this monitoring and surveillance team. And with respect to the life, L means less means by restricting access. That's what we talked about. Better interaction with media for responsible reporting, and start from the young, F for from the young in their life skills. And the last is early identification, that is management and follow-up. Now these are some strategies. Okay, it is called Live Life strategies. So basically what it means is it is a multimodal approach. There 9,000 psychiatrists, however we are good in India as of today, we cannot do any justice to an 1.2 billion population with a suicide rates of about 11 to 13 per lakh population. Okay, so it is all the stakeholders, including me, you, the audience, everybody, who's going to get into a culture where suicide can be talked about, a positive mental health can be talked about. Okay, so reducing stigma, increasing accessibility, having an open culture, and active listening. These are simple things that anybody can do. It need not require a psychiatrist to sit and talk to a patient in distress. All of us are stakeholders. All of us are gatekeepers.
Got it, got it, got it. Also, I think one other question that has come up is you did mention about the statistics of suicide with regards to the youth. I think a question that's more like a follow-up question. I believe she just wanted to know what is statistics of suicide in India based on the various age groups. Like, how do they more age groups that are more susceptible to suicide, etc.
Yeah, definitely. As I told, the highest is between 10 to 29 years of age. And between 10 to in the adolescence, say between 10 to 19 years of age, the suicide rates are definitely high. It's even second or third cause of death in adolescents. The one thing that you need to note here is the ratio in general in suicide. It's usually the males who are more of a suicide completers. In general, if you look at the suicide thing, but this age group of 10 to 19, the gender difference between a male and a female is almost equal. That is, both gender with male gender or a female gender have equal propensity to attempt suicide between this age group of 10 to 19. Now, that is very, very important when you intervene, because the risk is equal between the two genders. Otherwise, in general, we say it's the male gender that is very, very common. If you want absolute numbers, there are WHO websites and there are Indian websites which gives you a classical distribution of suicide within the state, within different districts and other things, within an urban and rural divide. But these are the numbers. Now, I just want to touch upon that part. Please note these numbers. How did you get across these numbers? These numbers are reported. Okay, till recently, suicide was probably a criminal offense kind of a thing. It was under 309 IPC. So, 90, a lot of them don't get reported at all, and including we professionals sometimes in hospitals, they just make it as drug overdose and accidental consumption, etc. So it doesn't even get reported as a suicide attempt. So though the numbers look huge, but still they're tip of the iceberg. Now you can imagine what is the real number.
True that, Dr. Kiran. I think that's a very interesting talk that we had. I think one last question I would like to ask you is, if somebody, a young person or anyone for that matter, is contemplating suicide, what would you like him or her to know?
Yeah, one is it is a common emotional phenomenon that life looks very bleak and pessimistic, and suicidal ideations can crop up to any one of us. Okay. So one is it is a normal emotion, probably sometimes also, but acting out on these emotions is a big no, because completing a suicide or attempting a suicide is a tragedy. The family or the caretaker will have a lot of negative impact. The society per se will have a lot of negative impact because of this event. So acting out on this thought is a big no. Getting a suicidal thought is okay. It is sometimes even normal to get a suicidal thought. Talking about it to a good caretaker or a significant elderly person or to a mental health professional if available is very, very important. So one thing is, a mental health professional is available probably at least in a metro at a throwaway distance today. So coming and talking to them, or there are a lot of lives, phone lines available kind of a thing for crisis intervention. Like there is Neha Foundation, there is Leave Love Law Foundation, where it's just available. And the person, for the audience who are listening, I think a lot of us are savvy about mobiles today. If you just say okay Google, and if you say I want to die, somebody can try out also. It comes out with and say that with a thing that you're not the only person who want to die. There are a lot of other people, and helpline is available, and gives you a list of helplines. So that's the collaboration that a lot of people, stakeholders, have done by introducing this into Google. Okay. Now this was not there a few years back. So if you say okay Google, I want to die, the Google will tell everything that it is okay to feel like that. There are a lot of people who feel like that, and there is helpline available. So help is basically available, but it's finding the right person at the right time. That's make the trick kind of thing.
Sure. I think that was a very, very like insightful talk that we had with you, Dr. Kiran. So once again, from behalf of everybody in the Global Shapers Bangalore Hub and the viewers who are on our webinar, we wish to thank you for taking time out from your schedule to attend this webinar for us and answering a lot of audience questions that were posed to you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kiran, and once again, all the very best in doing the amazing work you're doing in the field of psychiatry. Wish you the very best, sir.
Thank you, Siddharth, and thank you, Global Shapers. Any problem, you are always welcome to contact me on my mail ID. drkiran.psychiatry@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Just one last doubt, Kiran. Dr. Kiran, can I mail the mail that we'll be sending out to all the viewers of the webinar so that they can reach out to you in case you have any questions?
Yeah, definitely. That can be done.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Dr. Kiran.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So, with that, we come to the first half of our webinar, Alive 2019 has come to an end. So, the next speaker that we're going to be introducing to you is Miss Raashi Thakran. So for those of you who are not aware, she's just 21 years of old, 21 years of age, but she's been doing some phenomenal work with regards to suicide prevention. She's been trying to create a movement and apply pressure on the government to make some significant steps towards suicide prevention, and let her talk about this. So I'll just check if she's able to talk now. Rashi, are you able to? Okay, are you able to hear us? Hello, Rashi. Rashi, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, Rashi. We can hear you.
Hi.
Thanks a lot for taking your time, Rashi. On behalf of everybody from Global Shapers Bangalore and our viewers. So I was just giving a very brief introduction about you, but we'd love to know more from your perspective as well. So is it fine that we can start off with some questions that we had to set the ball rolling?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So first of all, Rashi, so for some of our viewers who might not be aware, could you tell us about why you became an activist for suicide prevention?
So my journey as an activist for suicide prevention, it started this year itself. On 6th January this year, I lost my brother to suicide. And obviously it was a huge shock for us because we had no idea that, he was going through something or he was feeling this way. So obviously the first few months were a blur. I didn't know what to think. I was completely numb, and I couldn't really think straight. But after 2 months, when I was able to get out of it a little bit, I realized that, this is a huge epidemic. Suicide is very prevalent. It's so prevalent in our country and the world, and people are not talking about it because it's so stigmatized. People, it's like every 40 seconds, a person dies of suicide in the world. This is a WHO study. And in India, every 2 minutes, a person dies of suicide. And still, no one wants to talk about it. So I decided that, this is something that I wanted to work towards. I wanted to work towards mental health. I wanted to spread awareness about it. And that's sort of how I got into this.
All right, Rashi. Thanks a lot for sharing that very personal story, and we really admire the grit that you have to, make sure that campaign on such a personal cause to you. Also, just could you narrate to our viewers about the campaign that you're currently, campaigning on, the main campaign that you're working on right now, that you have a very successful petition as well?
Yeah. So I have started a petition on change.org asking the Ministry of Health to launch a national helpline number for suicide prevention in our country, because I did a lot of research in this area, especially in suicide and the helpline numbers which are available, and I realized that our country doesn't have a national helpline number. There are a lot of helpline numbers which are scattered, which are, some of them are not working, some of them are switched off, because I tried all these helpline numbers. I tried around 20 helpline numbers for it, and most of them were not functional. Only I think around 2 or 3 picked up, and that too, they were not very helpful. So this was very alarming for me, because I feel that a person who's in distress and who wants to talk about how they're feeling, and if they feel that they can't talk to their family or their friends, they would prefer to talk to a stranger. And the first thing, the thing that's very easily available is a helpline number. So they just search it on Google, and they would pick up the call, and then they don't hear a response. So you can imagine what it can lead to. People might take it as a sign, or people might just say, oh, this is not going to work. So that made me realize that it's very important for our government to take an initiative towards launching a national helpline number, so that, first of all, we have a helpline number which is 24/7.
Mhm.
which is pan India. People know about it. People know that, yeah, there is a helpline number that we can approach, and help is just a call away. And
Mhm.
secondly, government will, address this on a national platform at a national level, because
Uh-huh.
our government doesn't talk about mental health, to be honest. They don't talk about mental health on a national platform, and it's just very alarming. So these are the two things that I wanted to achieve through my petition,
Uh-huh.
and it has gotten a great response, which is amazing. So yeah.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Rashi, for sharing that insight. So you were mentioning about petitioning the government and wanting the government to take this as a priority, right? So we just wanted to ask you, what has your experience been so far when you pitched your proposal to government agencies and other organizations? Like, what are the kind of responses that you've received? What are the kind of challenges that you've faced? If you could just like walk us through it.
Yeah. So I have approached a lot of media houses with this petition. So I can tell you my experience with them, and also government organizations. So
Mhm.
the response, thankfully, has been pretty positive.
Mhm.
Um, we are doing a lot of campaigns, like this itself is a petition, and then we are doing a lot of campaigns surrounding this petition. So
Mhm.
we'll be working with the Quint. We have worked with the Logical Indian, so they are all taking out stories, and this is obviously starting a dialogue within the society. So that's one thing. And then secondly, we scheduled a meeting with the Niti Aayog in Delhi, and the health advisor of Niti Aayog. I couldn't go there because I'm in Pune, but the Change.org team, who's working with me on this petition, they went to meet him, and they pitched this campaign and this petition to him, and his reaction has been really positive, and he's like, yes, we do need a policy surrounding a national helpline number, and they want us to, just draft a proper method and a research paper, actually, to just see that how it's going to work and how we can start to go about it. And obviously that'll take some time, but he's up for it, and he is pretty excited about it. So that was a huge win for us, I feel.
That's very interesting to see that like a lot of the positive response that you got, because at least in Indian society as such, we do not talk about mental health leave on suicide, right? From a societal perspective, were there any people who, like, how do you say, how would people in your neighboring societies, in your communities, what was their first response when you mentioned that, hey, I'm going to do something about this issue of suicide and start, become an activist in this cause?
Yeah. So my family was very supportive. Obviously, I took their permission firsthand, because this is a very personal story, right? The story that I'm putting in the petition, it's about my own brother, and now it's got a huge reach. A lot of people are approaching, and obviously, there's obviously a breach of privacy in these cases. So I wanted my parents to be okay with it. I went to them and I told them that, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm planning to do, and I really need your support on this. And if this is
Uh-huh.
not okay, I'm not going to do it, because obviously I need your permission as well. I need your support as well. And they were very supportive. My family as such was very supportive. When it comes to the society, obviously, a lot of people were obviously very proud and very supportive, but there have been a lot of instances where people have just come up to me and said that, I don't know why you're doing this. It's not going to work, stuff like that. There was this really weird incident, and it was actually very disturbing for me, to be honest, when a person just came up to me and he just said that, I don't believe in your cause. I think suicide is a sin, and it's a crime. Yeah,
Hmm.
he said that to me, and he's like, I don't want to be associated with this, and I don't know why you even going for it. So
Mhm.
there have been these instances, and it's been very disturbing. I've, not been able to sleep for nights, because just I just keep thinking about this, and I just keep, sometimes I'm just like, it affects me so much that I'm very, very disturbed and distressed. But at the end of the day, that I know that, what I'm doing is something that first of all I have decided to do, and I'm going to do it. No one's going to stop me. And it's not going to be easy. The path that I've chosen to talk about it. I've chosen to put my story out there, and there will be such people. They will keep trying to question me, and they'll keep asking me such weird questions and just saying all these things. But I have to keep pushing through. I can't, let it affect me. That's something that I've learned. But just take it with my stride as I go on.
Got it. Also, very interesting that the person mentioned that it was a criminal act, but recently the Mental Health Care Act that was passed by the Parliament decriminalized it. So I think that's one.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was very interesting. I tried to change. I tried to talk him out of it, obviously, because I'm not the kind of person who will just if someone says something like this to me, I will not just not
Like,
hear it and let it slide. But I was just trying to be very nice to him and just say that I think you should maybe be a little more open minded about it and just hear me out or something. But he was not ready to listen. So at the end of the day, obviously you can't change everyone. That's one thing that I've realized. You can't change everyone. Everyone will, at the end of the day, have their own opinions. What you can do is try to help those who are with you and who want to be helped. You can help them, and that's all that matters.
true that, true that. Also, I think we got an audience question. One of the viewers has asked, why is the government not willing to talk about mental health? Like, isn't the government meant to talk about factors that affect life expectancy? So that's a question. So based upon your interaction with the government, do you think there's any particular reason why they are not talking about mental health as opposed to say, I mean, the government talks a lot about health in general. Like they talk about primary health, a lot, like, I mean, health, the recent, what do you call, health insurance is a big scheme that the government is championing. But why are they not specifically talking about mental health? Like, are you aware of any reasons that might be the case?
So I feel that the reason that they don't talk about mental health is because they don't think it's that important. I mean, it's very crazy, but they don't give mental health the same pedestal as physical health or some other. If there's some other disease, they don't give mental health or mental illness the same pedestal. And that's not just the government, that's all of us. Because if a person is going through some physical ailment, we rush them to the doctor and we're just like, oh, you need help, or you're bleeding, you need help. But when a person comes and tells you, I'm not feeling good, I might have some, I might have depression, or I'm feeling suicidal. This is not the first reaction that you give them. You are be like, oh, let's just get you to the hospital. No. So I think it's the stigma again, which plays a huge role. And when it comes to the government, another very scary thing that I uncovered during my research was that the interim budget that comes out for 2019, there is an interim budget, and in that, the amount of funds that they were supposed to give for the mental health program, there is a mental health program in place. They had reduced that. The fund has been reduced. It was already very less. They were not giving that many funds to the mental health program, but again, this year it has been reduced even further. So I don't know why that's happening. Why they feel that, oh, we don't want to waste our money, or we don't want to waste our funds on mental health care or this sort of thing. Because I think this is the biggest problem that India is facing. Depression and suicidal thoughts and just suicide in general is the biggest problem that India is facing. But the government can't wrap their minds around it, and they are not able to understand this urgency. So these are a couple of things that really alarmed me. But yeah, that's what I feel.
All right, all right. So it's something like the government doesn't care because the people who vote for them don't care enough about it. Somewhat.
Exactly. It's all of us. If we start talking about mental health seriously, and if we start taking mental health seriously, I think the government will too. They will realize, oh, our people, they need it. This is something that they need. If we start protesting for them reducing the funds for the mental health program, they will know that, oh, this is something that that the society needs. But no one is even thinking about that. No one even knows this fact that the number of funds have been reduced. So I think all of us as a society, we need to work towards normalizing mental health and mental illnesses. So
Mhm.
that's what I.
All right, all right. We received another audience question. So I think one of our viewers has asked, like, we have a lot of helpline numbers currently that exist, like the police helpline, the ambulance helpline, but they're often not reachable, and generally the operators are not as competent as well. So, what are your plans to ensure that the proposed government helpline for suicide prevention it doesn't face these issues?
So when we're working with the government, we'll make sure that first of all, here we will not start a helpline number from scratch. We are
Mm-hmm.
looking, like we even had a talk with the health advisor of Niti Aayog. So he suggested this that government doesn't know how helpline numbers work. They'll have to start from scratch to launch a new helpline number. Instead, we will look at the already existing helpline numbers, which are doing a good job, and we will try to make them pan India. So, for example, we have the Vandrewala Foundation. They're doing a great work. They're in Gujarat, and they are doing the 24/7, first of all, which is amazing. They're, I think, probably the only helpline number in India which is 24/7. And they are also doing a pretty good job. So we will use their resources. We will talk to them, and we will make them pan India. Obviously, this will take some time, but since we will know how they work, we will know that they have the resources, they have the proper people who can counsel people. Different psychiatrists and psychologists can also be, given to them through the government, and in that way, for example, this person is doing a great job in one state. Now they will be able to spread and do a really nice work all over India. So this is how we're planning to go about it.
All right, all right, all right. Thank you for sharing those plans of how you plan to go about implementing. It's also really nice to see that you've thought through the future course of action as well. So I think another question that we received from the audience is, what can we do to help those around us because we are people without any power? So I think the question kind of asks, like, as a lay person, how can you help those around you who are going through, let's say, suicidal ideation?
Yeah. So, first of all, it's very important to ask, to reach out. For
Mm-hmm.
example, you have to be empathetic with the people around you. And if you feel that a person is, first of all, a person who is going through suicidal thoughts will give you some verbal or non-verbal signs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel that this person is not in a good place, do not hesitate to just go to him or her and just ask, are you okay? Are you doing all right? Or even you can ask the difficult questions like, are you planning, are you thinking of killing yourself, or are you having suicidal thoughts? It's okay to ask these questions, because trust me, you will not put any ideas into their head. This is just a myth that talking about suicide will put ideas into someone's head, and you will just it look like you're encouraging them. No, that is not true. You just ask them if you're okay, if you need me to do something for you, and if you feel that that person, and the person, trust me, will talk, because these people, they want to talk about it, but they don't know whom to approach, who will understand how to talk about it. So if a person just comes to them and makes them feel that comfort level, they will talk to you. And if you feel that they need help, just offer to go with them, tell them that should I take an appointment for you, should I take you to a professional person who's a professional, and you can get help, you can get better. This is a treatable thing that you don't have to feel this way forever. It can be treated. So I think just being able to just talking to a person, just creating that safe space is very,
Uh-huh.
very important, and just listening to them attentively and with empathy, and most importantly, without judgments. You
Mhm.
should not judge a person who is telling you something so deep and so dark. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
very important, I feel.
All right, all right. Thank you, Rashi. Also, we received one more audience question. So one of your viewers has asked, have you considered helpline text because some people might not be comfortable calling? And also, could you mention a list of organizations that you would recommend to reach out to till the national helpline goes live? You can chat it over email with the larger group as well.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I have also been looking at helplines which are text-based because I've been researching and this has been implemented in US and a lot of different countries. And I think this is a better way for a person to be able to reach out because obviously most of the times people are not comfortable calling and talking about it. They're more comfortable on text, especially this generation. So
Mhm.
that is one thing that I'm also looking at, and I will be talking about that to the government as well. But before that, before taking that step, I want this basic helpline number to be available. Obviously, I have a lot of next steps, but before that, I want the government to do something about this helpline number and to create a national helpline number. And after that, definitely we can, once we have this system in place and we know that it's helping and it's working and this is the way to go, we can obviously, think about text lines and stuff like that.
All right, all right. Also, I think the same question also asked that are there any particular helplines that you would recommend until the national helpline goes live from your experience?
Yes, so I will definitely recommend the Vandrawala Foundation because they are 24/7.
Mhm.
And I feel that, this is very important. This part is very important for it to be 24/7 because these symptoms they peak at 4 a.m. at night. And most of the time it's at night that people are in a very dark place and they want to talk to someone, talk about it to someone. So that's one organization that you can reach out to. There's also iCall by TIS. So they are also doing a good job, but they're not 24/7. They are, I think, till 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. So these are the two helpline numbers which I can think of right now who are able to help. And also there's one more helpline number called Connecting.
Uh,
Connecting NGO also has a helpline number, and they are also really nice. They're Pune based, and but again they're not 24/7. But obviously till 10 p.m. they are functioning. So yeah, these are three helpline numbers which I recommend that you can call them,
all
and
right.
yeah,
So Mariwala, iCall, and connecting. Is it?
yes, correct.
All right. I think it's a very useful piece of information that we'll definitely pass along in the mail as well. So I think one of our viewers had a question. By talking, do you mean verbal leftover conversation or virtual mediums that today's trend? Because most text-based systems use AI automated responses. Okay, I think what she's trying to, what the person asking the question is trying to ask is, what are your thoughts on these kind of like a lot of the automated response systems that we have, where chatbots basically? Do you think they might be a good replacement for traditional face-to-face conversations, or what's your take on that?
Honestly, I am not in favor of that because I feel these are very personal conversations. These are very humane conversations. And me personally, I would prefer to talk to a person face to face. If not face to face, then on a call.
Uh-huh.
And I do not recommend anyone to go for chatbots because at the end of the day, the way that you're feeling, you want a person to be on the other end of the line and to be able to empathize with you. That's the most important thing. And robots or chatbots, they're not able to empathize with you. They won't be empathizing with you, right? They will not talk to you in a very in the same way that a human being would. So honestly, for me, a conversation should be very personal. It should be with a friend or a family member or anyone you think you trust. Anyone you trust and anyone you feel comfortable with. So that's what my take is on this.
All right, all right. Also, Rashi, coming back to activist work you've been doing, right? The petition that you have raised has collected over 150,000 signatures and counting, and it's an amazing achievement in the span of a few months, right? So, just wanted to know, how did you manage to get your message across such a wide audience in such a short period of time, and what are the biggest challenges and learnings that you got from this journey?
So honestly, I will not take all the credit for it. I cannot take all the credit for it because it was it was obviously I drafted the petition, I launched it, and then the change.org team has helped me a lot in mobilizing my petition for it to be able to reach people. And most importantly, it has been the people who have shared it, who have signed it, who have talked about it so passionately that it has reached this number. So honestly, all in all, it's the people, it's all the supporters and all the signatures, the 1,60,000 signatures which are on that petition. It's all them. They have done wonders. They've actually really inspired me, and I did not expect this kind of reaction and this type of response to this petition in the first place where it has happened. And yeah, it's really great.
All right, all right. That's very interesting to see the kind of thing that happens when people who think together kind of collaborate, and that kind of symphony happens where
Yeah.
sounds of
Yeah,
each other.
so they literally turned it into a revolution because overnight it went from around 8,000 signatures to around 60,000 signatures. So
Yes.
it just shot up, and I woke up in the morning and I just checked my phone, and I was seeing this number, and I was just like, oh my God, is there a glitch or what's happening? But it's definitely all of the supporters, all the credit to.
Got it, got it. Also, I think this one question that we asked everybody who's spoken thus far in our webinar, and we also wanted to ask you as well. So, to any young person or any kid or any student who's going through suicidal ideation, what would you like to tell them? Like, what would your message be if somebody who's going through that phase?
I would say that it's okay. It's absolutely okay to not be okay. This is one thing that I try to say to everyone. It's very normal. You can feel depressed, you can feel suicidal, but the most important thing is that you don't have to live with it forever. It can be treated. Suicide is preventable, first of all, and mental health um, illnesses or whatever you're going through can be treated. This is one thing that I wish I said to my brother also. I wish I was able to tell him that, it's okay to feel this way. It's going to pass. And you can get help. You can seek professional help. And there is no shame in that. People are very shamed to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist because they just feel that, oh, I'm weak. If I'm feeling this way, I'm weak, which is so not true. You are not weak if you're going through this, because a lot of people, all of us actually have been there, or we know someone who has been there. So it's very common and it's okay. Just don't feel ashamed of how you're feeling. Embrace it and just get help. And trust me, you will get better.
Got it, got it. Also, one more question I wanted to ask you, Raashi, is as a young change maker who's just like 21 years old, what message do you have to tell other youth who might be wanting to make a difference in whatever way or field that they want to make, right? Because a lot of times, like at least the general message that people tell youngsters who want to make change or who want to make some like difference is that just like settle down, watch your own priorities first, go get through college, and then you can think about all this. I mean, that's a very common message that we tend to tell our youth, right? So, what would your message be to people who are young, who are probably still in college, but yet want to make a change?
See, if you want to make a change, just take for people's opinion, just take that and throw it in the dustbin. That's what I'm going to say, because people will always have something that they would like to say to you, that they would like to just throw on you, that oh, you can't do this. You have so many other priorities that you need to look at before you can get to this. I don't think that's true. For me also, it's on you. It's about your priorities, what you want to work towards, what you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about something, you can do something in the most in the smallest way possible. You can start with a very small thing. You don't have to start by changing the world or bringing a revolution. No, you can start at your own pace, at your own time. You can work towards it in bits and pieces. And then, trust me, even a small change has a domino effect. It has a ripple effect, and it will lead to a greater change. So just follow your instincts, just follow your heart, and if you want to make some change in the world, I say you go and do it. You do you.
I think that is a very inspirational message for the young viewers who might be viewing it right now. Thanks a lot, Raashi, for taking time out and sharing your personal story as well as the great campaign that you're doing. One thing that I would request you is to also, if we could send the link to your petition as well in the mail that we're sending out to the viewers. And if there's any way that people can reach out to you if they have any doubts or if they want to help you out, do share some contact details that we can also share with in the mail that we're sending out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Raashi, for taking the time out from everyone in the Global Shapers Hub and as well as people who are attending the webinar right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Global Shapers for having me.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
So now we have come to the final speaker for this webinar, Alive 2019. So just before I introduce her, I just also want to thank everyone who's been taken part in the seminar so far and people who have attended. So our final speaker for the day would be Miss Rupa. Just a brief introduction about her. She was an embedded software engineer. She quit her job and right now she teaches tango dancing. She's quite multi-talented, as you can see. And she unfortunately lost her brother to suicide long ago. And she would be talking about some aspects that kind of get, I would say, clouded out in all this discussion about suicide, about what happens to the support systems of people who we have lost to suicide, right? Like, how do their families cope with it? How do their loved ones cope with it? And how can we help them? So that is what we'll be talking about right now. And I believe he's on the call. Rupa, are you able to hear us? Can you talk?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Rupa. So thanks a lot for taking time out and talking to us, especially about issue that is extremely personal. We are extremely grateful and thankful that you agreed to talk with us, Rupa, as part of our first webinar on this subject.
Okay.
We just had some questions to kind of structure the webinar for you. So the first thing would be, how has the loss of a loved one affected your life and that of your family?
Actually, I felt like I was the reason for what happened to my brother. A bit of a background story is I was very good at my school and college days. I was a topper in the school and all that. Because when you're in a small net community, what happens is, your younger brother is, even though it's not your family, when you stay in a small community, they start kind of expecting that they also do better. So my brother actually committed suicide a day before his exam.
Okay.
And he tried to call me, and unfortunately I was traveling and the call didn't come through. Within half an hour again I get a call from my house and he had already done what he had done. So someone who found him called me. So for a long while, it's not in terms of, oh, what happened? It was more like I am the reason. Though directly I was not the reason. I mean, it took a lot of counseling. But the worst part was, in my family, my parents are very young. Like I was born to my mom when she was 15, so child marriage, they're too young. They kind of depended on me even emotionally, and I was broken. So because I was broken, my family kind of lost hope in every which way. So not just one person, what he did, the whole family just crumbled like a, house of cards, like they tried. And I felt like even now, my parents don't really realize when I kind of go through low phase. Even when I tell them, they are loving, extremely loving. They start saying things like, oh, you shouldn't feel like that. We love you so much. But they don't understand. So what happens is, like, I see, though things have happened in our family, there is a disconnect in how we are supposed to understand the other person when somebody is going through. So it broke in a different way. So even today I can't really explain what happened and how it has affected it. It's we are together, yet not together. That's the effect.
But I'm
Yeah.
really sorry to hear about that, and extremely. I mean, I'm immensely impressed by the strength that you have to recollect this painful period in your life to our audience. And I think the reason why we're having this session is essentially that, like you mentioned, a lot of us, we don't understand that the support system of a loved one, what do they go through? Like, how can we help them? And I think that the way you mentioned it really gave us a picture of the kind of challenges a family faces. Thanks a lot for that. Also, one of the things that we wanted to ask you was, how can you support people who are dealing with, like, let's say, a loss of a loved one, right? Like, let's say, so this is, again, just a personal anecdote I would like to share is, I know a person, family friend who lost someone to suicide, but the thing was, she faced even more ridicule after that from the society in terms of people asking her mother she should have taken more care of him,
Yes.
so on and so forth. So our society seems to have a lot of very, I would think, prejudiced notions when it comes to like helping the family through this tough time. So could you just like help us know about what do you think, like we as people who have like probably know somebody in our networks who has gone through this, how can we help? How can we support them?
See, when you see society, we are always thinking people outside, okay? But I am telling you, we are 4 of us right now in family, and I lost a brother. We blamed each other. I mean, at so many levels, I blamed my mother unknowingly that how could you not see? Don't even have to go for society who is not connected to us, who doesn't understand. What I feel is necessary is these feelings, what we feel of blame and pointing, are natural. The thing what you should really stress on is being able to communicate when you're feeling that low. You know, like how could you not see, ma, I'm feeling like this. To the other person feeling like, yes, you know, like it's all about talking. Even if it is feeling negative, it's not about, okay, I need to talk. There is a question and the other person is going to give me a solution. That's the problem we are facing. Live outside. Even when I went to a counselor, I went to a thing like, okay, this person will give me a solution. Or when I talk to a friend, I'm thinking this person will give me a solution. No, there are no solutions. Even if you're feeling there is a hatred, there is some kind of resentment, you need to be able to talk it out. That's my point. But it took a long. So because when the family is getting so stressed, you need some friends who are sensitive, not knowledgeable, who are sensitive. And I was lucky to have a few friends around me who had not gone through this. They didn't know what I was going through. I actually even feel even today there is a certain clinical depression that exists in our family because I do see some signs in me sometimes, but I can catch myself and I immediately when I feel like that, I try to connect to my friends. When I feel a bit serious, I'd really directly go to a doctor. Okay. But that kind of a learning has come through what has happened. Not everybody will like, like, oh, I have to study about this and I'll study. Nobody will do that unless these things happen to it. You just need those 1 or 2 sensitive people around society, not even friends, like even some random person who can notice. These things are so noticeable. Now because I've gone through this with my brother and with me, I can see it. You just need people to be sensitive. Just what the other person, like the lady who spoke before me was talking about, like hey, are you okay? It's a chain of thought. Like I have felt like when I'm going through something, it's like a spiral. You just need something to break that thought process. Then you can catch yourself. Okay. Even the person who wants to commit suicide, like my brother, sorry to be explaining deeply, he hanged himself. But there's a point in him when he called, means he wanted to live. Right? If he wanted to just die, why would he call me? He wanted to talk to me, saying like, talk to me. Like, if I don't score as much as you score, nothing bad will happen. Everybody, even when they're hanging, scientifically it is said that that moment when the pain hits you or things are happening, you want to live. So you just need somebody to just cut that thought. Suicide is a particular like a spike thought. If you cut it, you can like reverse it. And it's not like once it happens, it goes away. You will spiral and spiral. Sometimes you really spiral fully deep is when you commit suicide. But there are other times you may not really do such bad things, even small things like cutting yourself. It's a call for help. Or doing some stupid things. Like, I remember like, once I was driving and I was so angry, I just wanted to go and bang my car into something. But people, if you are somebody who's near you, if they interpret that as you have anger issues or you're crazy, or you're too dramatic, these are the words we should be careful about, So just as people be more sensitive to listening, you don't have to give solution. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Makes sense.
Okay. Oh, really? You don't even have to say I understand. Oh, really? You're feeling like that? Acknowledge the feeling. That's enough.
So, if I may paraphrase, it's more about like lending a patient ear, like not offering solutions per se, but listening to them.
That's it. Or even the recent thing why my brother died long ago. It's been 14 years. That's why I can speak about it not being so emotional because I'm a bit more removed. But last week, a friend of mine just messaged me. I was really unwell. Oh, what are you doing? I said, I'm really unwell, so I'm taking rest. Oh, it's okay. If you need some help, tell me. I said, no, it's okay. Like, I've already visited doctor. Then she just says the last line, you were my last message, Rupa. If you hadn't replied, I was about to kill myself. Okay. So, and then, I tried to talk to her because I was not in a position to drive. Some drama happened. I somehow called a friend of mine. We drove to her house, just tried to pull out of that situation, though she was not planning to do anything. But for me, it was a bit of a deja vu situation again, somebody calling me. But it was also, I felt a bit good about myself that this is not even a very close friend of mine. Somebody who I know in a circle. So that's why it was her last call. I think she called all her close friends or whatever, nobody somehow. It could be for some reason they did pick up. But she felt like if I call her, she will listen or she will not judge. And that kind of image of mine has come in my extended circle is because I'm very open about what happened in my life to how I feel. Okay, so just being that person that, if somebody is feeling remotely, they sense your energy is my point. You are open, I can say things to you and you won't judge me. Yeah, just that's the level of sensitivity is what you have to be. That's it.
True that. I mean, I also think that you should be praised for taking, helping save a person's life. I'm not sure how many people have reacted that calmly and that, made the right decision.
Also experience. Then again, but I had a very bad experience, so I wouldn't really expect it. That's what I keep telling people. It's not like you will open a book to study and, it's not all these helplines and all. People will not even go there in the beginning. That is when you decide to take care of yourself. Like when I decided after 1 or 2 years of, what am I feeling and all that, is when I seeked help. Seeking help, medical help or a call or a helpline are all later. When you are going through that thought process, those are not the people you will ping. I remember going through my phone book and seeing, can I call this person? Can I call this person? We have hundreds and thousands of friends, so-called on Facebook and our phone book. Not one person we feel connected we can call. And that is what I feel like, I've really now tried to gather people around me. So even if it is slightly I'm feeling down, I don't shy. I just tell them, I'm feeling really down. Can I come over or can you come over? People just being open about how they are feeling, because we are not in a society where we stay with our family. And all said and done, I have a family, yet I cannot explain it to them. Not because I am not able to speak. Even when I tell them, they are a different generation. They say, we love you so much, you can call us anytime. But they don't listen the way I want them to listen. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So you just need somebody my kind of a person or my age person, or you want to see the reflection of yourself in that person. Then you feel like I'm heard. Okay, so I have met multiple counselors. If the counselor is a bit older or somebody who I feel, even if they're listening, they cannot understand what I'm trying to say. Same way, if I have somebody, who's 35, 36, I feel that person is listening to me more. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
The relatability that you get from somebody whom you
Yes, though you know nothing about them. It's a certain, okay, this person will understand what I'm, an older person, no. Or even a way younger person, you need for each person. So if an 18-year-old is going through that, a 30, 45-year counselor not going to help as a first layer. That person needs from 15 to 20, 21, 22 to be around them. So, that's why we as a society need to really become more sensitive by becoming more aware. So now I have not doing anything more, but the very next, how the other person is doing petition and all that, the next 2 to 3 years, I connected to radio stations, and just before the examination, we had interviews and all that with people who have gone through that, just to make parents aware how to be careful, what to notice, because as she was saying, there are such telltale signs, because every person who commits suicide is wanting to live. They will call for help. The call for help will be different, and I'm telling you, most of the time it's going to be verbal. Okay, the person who said you were my last message is very secretive person, would never tell how she feels. If that person was ready to verbalize what she was going through, they will call for help. It's our really duty to catch them. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing your very informative perspective on this, Nipa. So also one more thing that I just was kind of curious about was the fact that you did mention that you currently teach tango dancing, right? Just kind of want to understand whether, do you think that arts and dance help a person cope with their mental health, their mental well-being, and you narrate your journey through that?
That was one of the main, literally, tango I teach now 6 years. I started dancing salsa because I started getting suicidal thoughts immediately after my brother, because I started feeling very pressured, the whole family dependent on me, and my parents stay in town, but soon after they moved to Bangalore to stay with me. So I couldn't even cry, because I felt like if I cry in front of them, it will be they'll see, they'll break down. So I couldn't get out. So what I used to do was, I had just started driving. I used to take my car and just choose a way and start driving. That was my getaway, and I would just howl and cry in my car. After a while, I started realizing if I am spiraling down, and I knew I loved dancing, and there was a board which said salsa dancing, and 15, 16 years ago, this was not much of a word which I had heard. But because I started dancing, I had a certain fixed thing of, even if I'm not connecting, in the beginning I didn't connect as a dance form, I love dance form. You need some fixed regiment where you like to get out. Saturday, Sunday, there's 2 hours, I'm going somewhere. Okay, I had a thing there. So literally salsa saved me. Not as a dance form. For me, that art form saved me, because it was an activity which took me out. But when I came to tango, I started becoming more sensitive. And nowadays I have a student who enters my class. I can look at them and I know what they're going through. It almost feels like I'm talking too high, oh, how will she know? No. It makes you so sensitive, and they come in, it's like a cloud which is there on their head. You can see it. And because tango is more like you just hug and dance, so it's more close. I started realizing, because India as a culture is not very touchy-feely, we don't hug, So even before verbal, a physical just, how are you feeling, will make a lot of difference. Because without knowing, they come and hug somebody, without they realizing, within 2 to 3 sessions, I can see them relaxing. Okay, so Tango actually is a therapy. I mean, it's being used as a therapy in lot of countries for Alzheimer's and all those people. Like it is used as a therapy. But this I see, and India really requests this because even we don't like. How many of us really hug, our parents? Very few. It's not in our culture. So we need that warmth. Like, the body, you need that.
True that.
Yeah.
Also, I think we touched upon a very interesting subject that I wanted to talk to you about, Rupa. So, in a lot of our family context, right, we have, I mean, I won't say it's not the lack of love or the lack of emotion, but it's a lack of a particular type of emotional vulnerability, maybe. Like, for instance, like you said, we aren't encouraged, most Indian families don't encourage close physical bonding. Most Indian families don't encourage stuff like professing their affection and love for each other on a verbal basis. Do you think these cultural factors kind of play a role in making, making a person more mentally healthy, based upon your experiences?
Absolutely. See, I'm telling you, I have the best parents in the world. Like when I tell people, like I am 37, unmarried. Every year, like 3 months, I travel the world, and they let me do whatever I want. If you see in a broader form, like, they're very supportive in every which way. They really love me, but they don't understand these things. And do they not hug me because they don't love me? No, because it has never been there. My mom will call me at 12 o'clock on my birthday. She never will say happy birthday because it's not in her vocabulary. She'll say, oh, you turn 1 more year older, how are you feeling? That's the way we are brought in. That cannot be changed. But going forward, like because that is an older generation, like think from now onwards, I am in a weird generation where I was not brought up with that. So I cannot suddenly change that with my family. How do I have a safe system where I can get that affection? The next generation, maybe, like if I have a, child now, I will be very affectionate. So this generation where, like we are crossing from that and entering here, we are the most vulnerable generation. So we have to create other avenues to have physical proximity. I mean, you can, it is required. Like hugs are required. Free hugs is not a joke. It's really, I'm telling you, if you find somebody, like if you can hug, please just hug them. Don't say anything. Just hug and stay for 5 minutes and see the magic what it has. Really.
Thanks for sharing that, Rupa. So also, I think for the previous speakers of the webinar, we asked them what would you like to tell to somebody who is going through suicide. But for you, I also want to ask you something a bit different. What would you like to tell families or loved ones who have lost someone to suicide? Like, what would you like them to know and like them to hear?
I don't know. I was thinking what I would have liked to hear when I was going through something.
I mean, I know it's like a slightly weird question to ask, but the reason why I just wanted to ask it was the fact that we often do not think
what I felt was people actually ran away from me. So, just to give you a bit of context, I told you he couldn't call me because I was traveling, right? So, 6 of us colleagues had gone to Khajiar, in Himachal, is when he did this. So, the 5 or 6 people who are with me, like when this happened there, we got a call, I immediately had to fly from there and all that. They didn't even call to ask. Did they do that? Did they not like me? No, we were friends. We were in a trip. So we were that close that we went on a trip. So people are when these things happen, they don't know what to say. So even if it is just saying a very clinical condolence message, that needs to be sent. Does it make sense?
Makes sense. So
you're saying ran away from me. So even if I wanted to call, I couldn't start a conversation. I myself will not call them and say, I want to talk to you when this happened to me. If they had even just started that, the conversation would have started. Like, how could he do this? Something I could have said.
Makes sense.
They ran. Like, I felt like they're like, oh, we don't know. Like, you are one that we don't want to touch you. Like, what's happening? Kind of a way. Yeah.
Got it. You're basically
Even
telling
if it's a clinical message, start that connection. Create a passage where something can happen.
Got it. So if I could put it in summarize it, maybe you're saying if somebody is going through a situation like this, do not run away from them, fearing that what you're saying might not be the right thing to say.
Yeah. Or even feeling like, I think they are not bad people. Absolutely. And they liked me. Like I was even now I've become back to what I was. I was a very fun person. Like if I was not going to a party, they would say, okay, we'll do when you are there. I was the life of the, group. It was like that. So they really loved me. What they couldn't handle was they saw, because I heard the news when they were there, they suddenly saw the other side of me. Like this happy person suddenly becoming this. They didn't know what to. They were also young, right? Like I was 22, 23 when my brother committed suicide. So all my friends were also the same age. So when you're young, of course you cannot expect that kind of maturity in them. So as I don't know how we can bring that in them, but yeah, I can only ask. Just even a clinical condolence message would have helped at that time.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. It must have been incredibly isolating to
Yes.
not.
Yeah, and there was no Facebook, there was no WhatsApp. It was not a very easy communication era, by the way. You had to literally call the person. So it made it even that much more difficult to connect to somebody. They must have felt if you call, what do we say? Like, I can understand, but just that one message, one or two person, I tell you, all 6 of them abandoned me. Like literally they dropped me like this and they left.
That must have been a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Also, I think one last question that we want to ask you is, what do you think as a society we can do to change? I mean, what can we as a society change to prevent people from taking that extreme step? I know that you have mentioned quite a lot of points throughout the talk. Was there any one particular thing that you feel like this, if we change, this will lead to a lot of lives being saved? Like one particular, like biggest bang for the buck, if I could put it like that.
Talking about our emotions normal. This whole thing of, oh, you're mature, you deal with your own thing, or, what is this? Don't wash your dirty linen outside. These things are misused to a different level. Like you're saying single, in office also you want to be professional. If I'm meeting somebody, like literally, like it's down market to talk about your emotion. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, offer your advice, don't talk about your emotions. Put them
Yeah, get the shit out. Like, let's go by what is the requirement. We are in a kind of society which has become so nuclear. Okay. And if somebody's, like for me, it took a long time. I have gotten names to like crazy person, to drama queen, to now, okay, she is that, to acceptance. It took a long time, but not everybody will be able to deal with that. I was one of those, like, I don't care attitude person. But even me, I try to censor myself. Like, if I'm going through this, let me handle it. If I tell, judge. Making it normalized. Like talking about, let's start with simple things. You know what? I fought with my mom. You know what? I fought with that person. You know what? How could he do this to me? Or it's okay to talk about what we are going through. Like simple stuff.
Makes sense. I think on behalf of Global Shapers Bangalore Hub, everybody there and everybody who's viewing this webinar, we'd like to thank you a lot for taking time out and attending this webinar, and also talking about stuff that are incredibly personal to you. We understand how much that must have meant. So once again, Rupa, thanks a lot for taking your time. And on behalf of everybody from Global Checkers Bangalore and our viewers, we hope you have a great week ahead as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rupa. And with that, friends, we come to the end of Alive 2019, our first webinar hosted by Global Shapers Bangalore to talk on the subject of suicide. So we are planning a lot of other events as part of our mental health initiatives as well. If you would like to know more about what we do, feel free to reach out to us on our social media networks or through email, and we can get to discuss more. Thanks to everyone who has joined our seminar, and let's see how this goes. And thank you.